Who's opener?
I think it's yours.
What episode number?
238.
Welcome to Making Tracks.
You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha. It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Mr. Back.
Welcome to Making Tracks, brought to you by those fine folk over at fantracks.com. My name's Mark, one of your co-hosts, and joining me this week, Mr. Mark Newbold. How you doing, buddy?
I'm fine. How are you? We got so much to talk about today.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, I'm very well, thanks. And
Good.
to answer your second question, yes, we do have quite a bit to talk about. But I'll tell you what, let's take a step back, because some feedback that I have received from some listeners, we haven't talked about our recent acquisitions recently in our collection. So I figured I should ask you, what have you picked up recently?
I will tell you just what's come today. A couple of eBay things that I got, a couple are Amazon. So the Amazon one was the deluxe 20th anniversary edition of Revenge of the Sith with the Matthew Stover annotations. I've been sort of going through and looking at the details. Absolutely fascinating. The story of him going to the ranch and getting the gig and sitting down with Lucas is brilliant, as is his interactions with Howard Rothman. I won't give any more away. It's well worth a read. I'm very much looking forward to digging into that. I've just got started on The Last Order, which is the new Janna and Finn book, which is out next week. That so far is very interesting. So enjoying that. I got an Academy Screener DVD of Revenge of the Sith.
Nice.
Yeah. Black cover, just Revenge of the Sith and all the sort of details on the back. I got it for an absolute steal. I think it was about 10 quid. So whoever sold me that didn't know what they were selling. I got the double disc Revenge of the Sith vinyl with the Matt Ferguson cover. Absolutely beautiful. And then the other thing I got, which was really weird because it's identical to the copy that I've had for 45 years. It's the single disc Empire Strikes Back vinyl, but it was a sample copy. So on the back, embossed in gold, is not for resale, sample copy. Nothing different other than that, but I saw that and I thought, I want you in my collection. And those things just came today. It's been a good day. Oh, my Rancho Obi-Wan renewal kit came yesterday, which was gorgeous. The pin is beautiful. The patch, it's Steve as Obi-Wan. And lovely little message in there. Talks a little bit about the Saga Museum as well. My 13th year now as a member for me, so my Rancho collection's quite hefty and gorgeous.
Yeah, lovely.
How about you? Anything cool come for you?
I mean, nothing cool. So, because I mean, I haven't really been looking too much, but I have been trying to fill a couple of holes. Yarrick Yeager and Bucket action figure from that TV series. Do you remember?
I remember Star Wars Resistance. I was, funny enough, editing something I work on, and it was a piece about Star Wars Resistance. So, yeah, funny you should mention that.
Yeah, so him and also the Poe Dameron figure, because I was just moving some figures around, and it's like, hang on a second, I think I'm short. I'm sure there's a Poe. And I've got some other stuff kind of coming, so maybe that's next week.
I'm so excited because I want to talk about all this stuff. So whilst I say that, why don't we do that? Let's dive into the news. The first bit of news is regrettably a sad piece of news. Last week, we learned that Drew Struzan passed away. He was 78 years old. He is known so well for the posters that he painted, the novel covers, the album covers, 150 movie posters he did for franchises, including, of course, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, E.T., Back to the Future, Harry Potter, so many more things than that. Novel covers for the EU throughout the 90s. He did a lot of the beautiful Indiana Jones novelizations as well. Incalculable, really, Mark, to describe the effect that he's had on fandom and on our perception of specifically Star Wars and indie, but I'm thinking more Star Wars at this point. The stuff that he did was so important, bringing these characters to us.
I think it's pretty fair to say that Drew really encapsulated the 1990s look of Star Wars. And you think probably the last really good theatrical poster that they put out was his Revenge of the Sith.
True.
Because after that, when we start to get into Force Awakens and that, it starts to look a little bit digitally comped together, and it's lost its organicness. But for a lot of those hardbacks of an expanded universe, they're done by Drew. And like I said, it's just that era, isn't it? It's like also some of the behind the scenes books that he did the artwork for, like, about George Lucas and stuff.
Creative Impulse. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the one. Thank you. He's left his indelible mark on many a franchise, and especially with Star Wars. Very sad. But there are few artists that you can roll off a tongue. Ralph McQuarrie's one, and Drew Struzan is probably the other one at the forefront of Star Wars fans' minds. Miss him, we shall.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zebralios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the Force be with you.
Incredible news, I think, and something that I did not expect to be on the bingo card for this week's Star Wars news. Adam Driver pitched a Ben Solo film set after Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It would have been called The Hunt for Ben Solo. It would have involved the contributions of Steven Soderbergh and Rebecca Blunt, who would have worked up the story. Rogue One rewriter Scott Burns worked on the script. Apparently Kathleen Kennedy was involved and very conducive to this happening. Lucasfilm loved the concept that Adam Driver and the other guys came up with, but apparently Bob Iger and Alan Bergman couldn't see past the death of Ben at the end of Episode 9, and so that was all she wrote. Adam says, I was always interested in doing another Star Wars. I'd been talking about doing another one since 2021. Kathleen had reached out. I always said, with a great director and a great story, I'd be there in a second. I love that character, and I love playing him. I think that's the thing that surprised me the most, the fact that he was so keen to return to Star Wars when, of all the actors moving past the end of that trilogy, my perception personally was that he was probably, I know Oscar Isaac was quite vocal about it, and so was John Boyega, but to me it felt like Adam Driver was probably the one that was the gladdest to put that behind him. Couldn't be further from the truth. What do you make of all of this? It's kind of blown my mind.
No, you're 100% correct. I'm kind of the same. I'm just like, I never really got the sense that by the time we got round to like Episode 9 that, Adam was too invested in it. It almost felt like he was slightly going through the motions a little bit. There is that big question mark, how do you do it? It's become a meme, and it's become a very well-used meme in Star Wars that somehow Ben Solo returned. We've just had somehow the Razor Crest returned. But on some levels, is it not a good example of how film studios aren't really focused on telling stories these days? We've not really heard many details about, when it was set, as it were, how he survived. However, you'd think somebody like the people involved, and with Steven Soderbergh as well, but they would have come up with something that would have been at least plausible in respects of its using the Force or something. Yeah. I'm just a little bit surprised. I mean, it creates so many interesting questions of like, how would Ben Solo operate and exist in a post Rise of Skywalker environment unless he's had a complete memory wipe? How would you continue to exist knowing the atrocities that Kylo Ren has been involved in?
It's a tricky one in that sense, and a fascinating one as well, because Anakin never had the opportunity. We've seen Anakin come back as a Force ghost in Ahsoka, and presumably we're going to see more of that in Season 2. So that's one aspect, and we saw Luke come back in Rise of Skywalker. We saw Yoda come back, at the very end of Return of the Jedi, and again in The Last Jedi. So there's a place for dead Jedi, Qui-Gon in Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I think, and I don't know because no more details have been given, and maybe nothing else will ever be given, and maybe the reaction to this, the very positive reaction to this, might just make Disney go, hang on, there might be something in this. So maybe there's legs in it. Yeah, I don't know. Because this hasn't been in the conversation that we've been having for years about what's coming next. This is completely new. I just wonder whether or not, because they created the Force dyad for Episode 9, a fairly new concept, they would have pulled that from elements they've seen here, there and everywhere in previous Star Wars writings. But as a concept, that was new. If you can bring that in and do it to the degree that they did it, which I think they did very well, actually, it was one of the aspects of 9 that I really enjoyed, then why not come up with another conceit that could see a Ben Solo come back? Because if the Force is a living thing, all these conversations about the will of the Force, and you consider Ben Solo the innocent and Kylo Ren the aggressor, let's say, and you treat them as two separate people in a way that Anakin and Darth Vader weren't as separate in many ways. So maybe there's a way around it there. I'd love to know.
With the dyad, because Rey's still alive, she's serving as the anchor, so can kind of pull him back into the land of the living. he imbued her with a lot of his life essence, didn't he? So like that link is going to be very strong. And there's that slightly convenient thing that we've got in the Filoniverse, which is this world between worlds and stuff like that. And it's like you wonder if maybe that's a way they could do it. Because that's the only thing with the Force Ghosts is that they are there, but they're there like for normally limited periods of time. They don't tend to just be walking around for hours upon hours and stuff. You kind of get the impression that they're there for 5 or 10 minute conversation and that's it.
Well, you mentioned Filoni there. One of the other things in the AP piece was Soderbergh and Rebecca Blunt outlined a story that the group then pitched to Kennedy, Lucasfilm Vice President Carrie Beck, and Lucasfilm Chief Creative Officer Dave Filoni. They were interested. So the filmmakers then pulled in Scott Burns to write a script, and Adam Driver called the result one of the coolest scripts I have ever been a part of. So that bodes very well for the quality of what you were getting, because all the right people are giving the thumbs up saying, well, let's pursue this, let's move this forward.
Yes. At that point, you start to go, well, yeah, who is really green lighting these films?
That is the bigger question.
That is the question, isn't it? Yeah, and potentially, because we don't actually know what the current status is really of the Rey film, whether or not, like you say, if there is such a positive sway online, whether or not they take a step back and it suddenly becomes a Ben and Rey film, if Adam's still obviously available and still wants to do it, and it sounds like he does. It seems kind of like they're shooting themselves in the foot. This could be one of those big what if moments with Star Wars.
It could be, but also don't you think that maybe I, as you agreed with, got the sense that he'd done it and moved on, and that was it. He'd done his stint, and on he goes. And yet maybe he's more attuned to what happens within the Star Wars realm than we realise, not only because of this and pulling in these heavyweight names, but also when you think of people like, for example, Hayden Christensen, who had his Darth Vader moment 20 years ago and had the trials and tribulations that he had with the character and the negativity of the fandom and all the other stuff that we've seen, all the nasty crap that, you know, we have to watch from the outside sometimes.
Yeah.
And then he comes back at Celebration and he's so warmly received, and now he couldn't be more involved again. Hayden's very much at the core of what's going on, and will be even more next year when Ahsoka comes out. And now Disney are obviously making overtures to, well, what comes next? Adam mentions 2021. That's only a couple of years after episode 9. They wouldn't have been looking at doing anything before that. The Disney Plus era has kicked off to the best sense. You know, you've had 2 seasons of Mando by then. You're filming at Andor. Book of Boba Fett's in the can by 2021. All these other things that have happened. So maybe Adam Driver's looking and thinking, you know, Kylo's my Darth Vader. And look at how well received Hayden was when he came back and has had this fantastic other life. And maybe, like a lot of actors do, it's great to have all your indie films gunning for the Oscar and all the things that you think Robert Downey Jr. would have wanted to do. But there's Iron Man in his background. And Adam Driver's got Kylo Ren, a character that most people would say came out of that trilogy, the most consistent performance, the most consistent presentation. Rey and Finn and Poe are very different in episode 8 to episode 7 and 9. Kylo's exactly the same. So there's a beautiful consistency to his performance and the way, even the way he's shot. There's the character to do something with. But the fact that it's not actually Kylo Ren that we're even talking about. We're talking about Ben Solo.
Exactly.
And it goes into that whole Reylo conversation, doesn't it? That went so hot and heavy in 2019.
Like I said, it feels like it's a missed opportunity on that level as well. You know, that was a thing that I think a lot of people were hoping to see in 9, and then we didn't. Who knows what the reason will be going forward.
But what does your gut tell you? Are you thinking they've said it now, it's out there and it's done? Or do you think there could be some legs in this?
Sometimes it's like a healthy leak can do wonders for, you know, momentum of a project. What I mean is it's out there now. People are aware of it. Maybe it's been done strategically to almost float the idea to the fandom, almost to see if there is traction. Maybe let's have that conversation again. Maybe that's what happened. Or maybe actually, as it's kind of alluded to in the Hollywood Reporter article, Adam sees it as they tried it, it was passed on, so they're moving on. Which is also kind of a healthy thing to do as well, rather than hang your coat on it and just keep on trying to push it around Hollywood and stuff, as it were, you know, just kind of like, okay, well, I guess not, let's move on.
But the fact that he was creatively invested.
Well, that's the most interesting part about it. He's the one who's come with this idea and really brought on, you know, he's the one who's gone around town and recruited some really heavy hitters to get the ball rolling. And then at least then he's not literally just having a coffee with Kathy and kind of going, I was thinking, how about this? This is what we're thinking.
And she reached out to him. That's important to say, that she reached out to him. And also, We talk about negativity in the fandom a lot on Fantha, specifically on Making Tracks. I'm certain that somewhere somebody's blaming Kathleen Kennedy for this. I think that would be a hell of a stretch to point the finger at her because she's the one that initiated the conversation. But by that point, I wonder whether she and Lucasfilm, Filoni and all the other guys had an idea and they wanted to just see what the interest was with Adam, sort of 2 or 3 years on from filming episode 9, or whether maybe they got a sense that he had some ideas. I'd love to know where that sat for that conversation to even start, because as I say, at that point, when was the Ray film announced? 2023 Celebration. This is a couple of years before that. So you've got to start thinking they were probably throwing ideas around at that point to be confident enough to even want to announce they were doing something. And here we are 2 years later and nothing's happened.
Yeah. Maybe Iger and Matt were thinking about it from the perspective of, we've just pushed this is the end of the Skywalker saga. And now we could be wheeling out a relative of Princess Leia and Han Solo, and would we be just calling BS on what we were trying to market episode 9 on? They would have to do some kind of a little bit of tap dancing around us and be like, well, this the end of the Skywalker saga has been finished, but this is the next generation and blah, blah, and or even if it's just down to like we were after 9, there's a bit of kind of franchise fatigue as well. Cinema hadn't really bounced back from COVID at that point. You would assume, probably looking at it from like a numbers perspective, but also maybe they just couldn't move on from this whole notion of like, yeah, but you're dead.
Well, that's how it reads. And that may be misrepresenting Iger and Bergman. It might be. There may be way more to it than just that. But the way it reads is that they didn't understand it. Plus, Steven Soderbergh's got involved. I think it's known he's a Star Wars fan. But that's a big name to bring in. And he's made some great films over the years. So you've got him.
Magic Mike XL.
well played. So, you've got him involved.
Yeah.
And there's talent right there, and drivers enthused. And you've got to think, well, if he's back as Ben Solo, how much would he have enjoyed those scenes as Ben at the end of 9? Because that is his big out of the whole trilogy. He gets a heroic moment. And I always loved, it never bothered me that he died. We say the ultimate sacrifice, but there's way more to what's going on than that. But the way it plays out, the fact that he's accepted into the Force as a Jedi, he disappears like Yoda disappears. Even Qui-Gon doesn't disappear like that.
No, exactly.
There was a real sort of sweetness, if that's the right word, to that death. And Rey seems to understand it as well. It's not a sorrowful thing. It all played well for me. I enjoyed that aspect. So to get into that netherworlds of the Force that Yoda actually talks about, how he's contacted Qui-Gon, maybe we'll see more of that. Maybe we'll see the actual Force world as opposed to the world between worlds.
Yeah,
or maybe the world between worlds is that. I don't know.
Yeah, it could literally be set in the netherworld of the Force. Could you imagine, like, the whole film? But also, is this not maybe part of the issue? Kathleen Kennedy, Carrie Beck, Dave Filoni, Mark Newbold, Mark Mulcaster, even to a smaller degree. We kind of get it. We kind of get the possibility. But then how do you promote that to the slightly more general audience who's slightly fatigued of franchising that? Because there will be people who will be like, yeah, but didn't he just die? Hell, it's for No Time to Die conundrum.
That's true.
It's like, how do you bring back James Bond? But the difference is with that is that in the Star Wars galaxy, there's almost like an inbuilt way, and they've set it up already. So it's not like, it doesn't have to be some kind of like hastily explained bit of exposition just to move the thing along. But actually they've got it, and they could develop it, and they could use that as a way to, the hunt for Ben Solo. And it's actually, it's Rey who's actually out looking for him or something. Who is looking for Ben Solo? Or is that maybe more of a metaphysical thing? Is it actually, it's Ben trying to find himself post First Order, now that he stepped away from the moniker of Kylo Ren? Who am I? I don't have an identity, as it were.
Yeah, what an opportunity, though, to have Anakin and Ben meet finally.
Yes.
Conversation. You start spitballing, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you're going to see with Hayden and Adam Driver as their characters. Weirdly, Hamill as Luke would be the old man. Kylo and Anakin died relatively young. Yeah, we can spitball all day, but I think the bottom line is that this is now out in the world. The concept of the hunt for Ben Solo is out there, like Duel of the Fates was out there, and all the other things that never quite happened. I just sense there might be a pulse in this. This could have some legs.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
The Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, it's coming to Los Angeles next year, 2026. There's been a lot of talk about it as it's been built. It's been put back. It's been put back. We've had pandemics. We've had all sorts of other stuff happen. That means that this museum that we probably thought would have been open for a couple of years by now is still somewhere down the line in the future. But it's nearly built and things are happening. People are moving in and doing a lot of work, and George Lucas is talking about it to the point that now there are articles focusing on George and Melody Hobbs and his wife talking about the museum. Lucas talks about the project himself. He says, I'm making a museum for what I call the orphaned arts, he says, talking about the snobbery that has excluded illustrators and cartoonists and commercial artists, all the people that he's championed over the years. He says, the museum is about the art that people respond to in the real world. He does say, grudgingly, that there is some Star Wars in there. I don't think he was particularly fussed about putting it in there. But as we've seen at recent conventions, New York Comic Con, LA Comic Con, there have been panels about the museum, bringing in some heavyweights, Guillermo del Toro, Martin Scorsese. It's nearly here now. What are your hopes for it? Are you looking forward to seeing this museum when it's out there in the world for real next year?
Other than Celebration 2027 LA, the only other thing I probably want to do is go to this Lucas Museum. Fantha Tracks has covered it since it was announced. It's been one of those things, isn't it, that's always been bubbling away in the background. And it's like, and the Lucas Museum will eventually get, finished. I'm so happy to see some of the interiors and that. And I mean, it's such an impressively, beautifully designed space. Architecturally speaking, it's just breathtaking.
It's something else, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I suppose when you think about it, George is one of the godfathers of pop culture.
Yeah.
And that is really what he's talking about. He's talking about the people who design pop culture, artists who worked on cartoons and comics and everything else, especially advertising. There's such a disposable design industry. You work on one campaign for 3 or 4 months, that's out there for a month or so, and then they're now selling the next version of the car and it's a different design altogether. I was obviously hoping that there would be some Star Wars. And I think, George is right when he says, I didn't want people to come to the museum and say, where's for Star Wars? Because ultimately, I think you've got to be savvy enough and go, well, if you're going to do a museum and call it the George Lucas Museum, I mean, people aren't really coming to see artwork from American Graffiti. Anything that you can put in that Star Wars, that's just going to help that. They could do a whole wing of Drew Struzan. They could have a whole gallery just dedicated to Drew Struzan.
If he wanted to, and he's savvy enough, and I love the way that you say that, how he is one of the godfathers of pop culture, because he really is. And he could have leaned into that to an insane degree. He's a frustrated architect. I love that he did all that work on Star Wars and built the trilogy and then goes and spends years building Skywalker Ranch. And there's an insane amount of work that went into that. And he designed everything down to the last little doorknob. I mean, it's insane the work that went into that. And so now he scales that up by a tremendous amount into this museum. But I also dig the fact that, and he says, I sold the company to Disney and they went off and did what they wanted to do with it. And I just had to let it go. And watching and reading this, it does feel like, he has let it go. He can't control it. He couldn't just come back into it. That's not going to work. And so he has had to sort of go, well, that part of my life, that ship has sailed. He'll never be thought of as anything other than George Lucas, the guy that made Star Wars, and he knows that. But we always say on the show, great to see George. Isn't he looking well? Hope he's happy and enjoying his retirement. Actually, I think he's very happy. And the retirement has been spent doing this project. Yeah. This is the culmination of the last decade of his life.
And you don't get the impression that it was an easy thing to just kind of sit back and just go, I'm going to build a museum. And it just kind of happens. Like I said, it's taken 10 years and there's been a lot of long meetings.
He wanted it in San Francisco. For whatever reason, they said no. And then he wanted to take it to Chicago, and that never worked out. So LA makes all the sense. Hollywood, isn't it? So there's a filmic connection there.
Exactly.
And pop culture, you kind of associate the two. So really, it probably landed in the right place. But yeah, I think it's incredible to think that pretty soon, by next year, we will be able to step into George's brain, essentially, and see some of the influences that culminated in THX Graffiti and Star Wars, and then everything that comes after that. It's going to be a real treat for us to be able to go into that.
Hi, this is Robert Ems, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So it might read like a slight, but actually I don't think it is. New York Comic Con last weekend, Laurence Fishburne was talking with the audience. He asked them what they thought of him playing Professor X in an X-Men reboot, even though he's already played Dr. Bill Foster in Ant-Man. One of the questions to him was whether he would ever consider joining the galaxy far, far away. And his answer was, no, I'm good. I'm watching everything. I'm watching every Star Wars. I'm in the middle of Rebels now. I'm good on the couch with Star Wars. I don't need a lightsaber. I don't pew pew. I don't need it. Now, some people would read that as a negative thing. I actually think that's really cool. To me, that says he likes Star Wars and he likes watching it and consuming it, and he's good.
Yeah, I mean, take it at face value. There are certain franchises that you would have grown up in, and I'd love to be in a Star Wars. I mean, it's something I spoke to Lee Townsend about in the early days of him working on Force Awakens and that. It's like, man, are you not going to kind of miss the anticipation from a fan perspective? So, yeah, I mean, obviously you don't have that anymore. You kind of have different experience. I mean, maybe he's also thinking like realistically, but actually, should these actors be in all these franchises? He's a big name. He's a solid, heavy-hitting actor, and so he could bring a lot of weight and clout to any role that he did in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's like, do you want to be X-Men and Ant-Man and Star Wars and Matrix and everything else? And suddenly, like, you've diluted your stock a little bit. I mean, whilst I completely agree with him, and I don't think it is agree with you, and I don't think it's a slight in any stretch of imagination, I think there's probably slightly more to the thinking as well. Maybe he's never been asked.
It probably means he will turn up in the next Star Wars film. But I love the fact that he's so open to... I mean, he's sitting on the couch watching Rebels. That's cool. A fairly deep dive for a casual viewer to be watching Rebels.
Yeah, especially this day and age. Unless, of course, you watch Ahsoka like season 1 and went, what the hell is going on here? I need to go back.
Well, yeah, maybe. But don't you think, and this was the joke for years, certainly throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, was that Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, Samuel L. Jackson, Laurence Fishburne and Will Smith would be mixed up with each other and interchanged very liberally by people who couldn't tell them apart, which is ridiculous when you think about it. But he's probably had 20, 30 years of people thinking he played Mace Windu. So does he need to be in Star Wars, really?
He's already been in it. We had 2 people play Mace Windu anyway. Well, 3 when you think about it.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, because he had Fake Mace in episode 1. I mean, I'd love to see Laurence Fishburne because I think he's such a class actor. It'd be fantastic to see him. Maybe we could lobby and get him off the couch.
Let's do it. Only when he's finished watching Rebels.
Anyhow, let's call an end to this episode, I think. No listeners' question this week, but we might have some next week. If you want to send one in, Mr. Newbold can tell you how you can do it.
Yes, I can, and here's how. And please do send in us listeners' questions, and we shall talk about it next week. But here's how you can send them in.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode, Mark.
Wicked. Well done, matey. Well, and look, I just want to say, because I don't think we say it enough, just remember that not only does Mark do everything on Fantha Tracks for free, everybody behind the scenes, and me apparently,
and you,
we all do it for the love of Star Wars. There's no Patreon, there's no paywalls or anything like that. You don't have to sponsor us. It's all good. We just do it for the love of Star Wars. So hopefully, if you love Star Wars as much as we do, you'll be back next week to listen to me and him prattle on some more. So until next week, stay safe, take care. Remember, support your local independent Star Wars toy sellers, and may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Desert Planet Discs.